Thank you for joining Leadership Rediscovered, a podcast devoted to all things leadership. I'm Laura Siebold, president and founder of Shine Consulting, and today I am very excited to introduce you to Adam Rohaly, who is an architect and part owner of Omni Associate Architects in Fairmont, West Virginia. Adam, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited. So I feel like architect was one of those jobs that when you would ask kids growing up, what do you want to be when you grow up? A lot of kids would say architect, but not many actually became an architect. So I know this is a leadership podcast, but I'm just so curious to ask you first, like, were you one of those kids?
I was. And that was pre-Art Vandelay, right? So pre-Seinfeld too. Yes. So I think it gained momentum after that.
Great. Strong start, Adam. Strong start.
It's so good. Can't go wrong with Seinfeld references.
No.
Yeah, I was one of those. I mean, I knew, I guess, middle schoolish. I liked to draw mostly. And I guess I liked math. My dad was an mining engineer, but I always wanted to do that. In fact, I've kind of thought back, was I mature enough to make that decision? Like,
right.
Maybe I don't know what I want to be when I grow up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I knew for a long time and kind of always headed down that path, and it made things a little easier decision-wise because that's where I was going.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, very cool. All right. So talk us through, if you don't mind, just, I've read your bio and you've had a really cool career and you've done a lot of really neat things within the community, which I think we'll get into later. Mm-hmm. But I just would love to hear your story from your perspective. So if you don't mind, just kind of walk us through your leadership journey.
Well, I was raised in Fairmont, born in Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm. I went to Fairmont State for my first 2 years.
Falcons.
Yeah, go Falcons. And I played baseball there I was there for 2 years. I was actually the all academic team representative, which means I wasn't good at baseball. So
what does all academic team mean?
So, after 2 years, it was time to let's go and get a real life degree.
Yeah.
Where I'm probably not going to go to the pros. So, I graduated from the University of Tennessee.
Okay, that's a great school.
Yeah, it was. It was a great place to be. And then right out of school, I moved to the beach. I wanted to go to the mountains or the beach. I went to the beach, Charleston, South Carolina area.
That's a pretty area.
Yeah.
Cool architecture there too.
It is great architecture.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked for a small firm, the same size that I work for now, but it was SMHA, and they were a top firm of the year in the state of South Carolina a couple times during the 10 years I was there. And I was kind of a mush head when I went there. That was the term that they gave me.
Okay.
So,
wait, what does that mean?
So they were able to sort of mold me right from college into the real world, because in architecture, college isn't necessarily the real world. It's more theory based. So I was there for 10 years. Learned a lot about architecture, learned a lot about leadership from those folks. And eventually my wife and I are both from Fairmont, so we came back.
Yeah.
And I've been back here for, I guess this is 11-ish years.
Gotcha.
So been a partner at Omni Associates there for the last 5 or 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I think coming back, I knew that I was going to be in the leadership role coming back. So, they actually offered me a job out of college, but I grew up in Fairmont. I got to leave West Virginia, right?
Check out the beach.
So, yeah. So, when I came back, I sent them same gentleman an email.
Nice.
And said, well, yeah, we're willing to talk to you again. So,
cool.
It worked out well. And our founder and senior partner, Steve Barnum, he was kind of headed towards retirement. And so I sensed that they were kind of looking to me to maybe have a high ceiling, kind of step into that role eventually. So I knew that my leadership journey was going to kind of step up a notch at that point.
Very good. Now, were you leading a team prior to coming to Omni?
No, in South Carolina, we were similarly modeled really to the way Omni is right now, but we had, I think we had 4 partners at the time, and there was a batch of probably 5 or 6 of us that were 2 or 3 years out of college at the time. So no, I was in a studio under a manager learning.
Yeah.
And I think by the time I was done, at the end of my 10 years, I was to the point where I was asking some questions like that,
Yeah.
Leadership based. I think I can do some of this, so
Yeah.
it was coming.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. You start thinking like, how would I handle that situation if I was in that person's chair? And I know sometimes for me, I will say that it's easy to be critical when you're not in the chair. So I think there were moments too where I was probably like, I think I could do a better job in that chair.
Yeah.
Then when I got in that chair, I was like, ooh, this is harder than I thought it was.
Exactly. You start to question some stuff and you realize, well, maybe I have enough experience, but then you need to do it before you realize, yeah, they were right. I don't know.
Yeah. And I always think it's interesting. Like, I'm so curious how these firms are structured, because I would think it's a fairly flat structure, almost like where it's more like project teams. Is that the right way to think about it?
Yeah, it is. We call them studios. That sounds more creative, right?
Yeah.
So
very cool. I like that way better. I might steal that.
Yeah,
name.
No, absolutely. It is. It's a fun one.
Yeah.
But we tend to split into the same groups.
Okay.
But it depends on workload. It depends on the size of the project. It depends on who ends up leading it ultimately.
Yeah.
And then the best fit kind of down the chain to support the project. So
that's good. So you are kind of, it seems like, paying attention to what people's strengths are and then figuring out, okay, who would the A players be for this particular project?
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. And all project we try to be as collaborative and integrated as possible, I guess, so that ultimately the best product comes out of it. So even if I brought it in and I'm going to work with a certain drafts person or whatever, it's still something that I want everyone to have a hand in and to look at to make sure that it's the best project it can be before it goes out. So
yeah. So what is that leadership experience like? Because I mean, you're leading a lot of professional people, right? And a lot of, I would say, very smart, capable people. And I think sometimes that can be a little bit tricky.
Yeah, it can be. And really, you mentioned smart, capable people. I mean, that's the goal. And I think that's the buzzword, is that people want to surround themselves with people smarter than them, right? And so I'm happy to do that. I tell them all the time, I tell everybody, I'll steal an idea from anywhere. Let's make it the best it can be. If you sketch it, if it's from the internet, if we modify something, we're going to make it our own, but it doesn't matter where it comes from.
It's inspiration.
It's inspiration. Yes. It's not a stolen idea. Right.
Yes,
Thank you.
Inspiration. Just like you inspired me to use the term studio.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Yeah. You can spin that or add some words on the front and back. So
exactly. Very cool.
Yeah.
So how would you define leadership in your own words and what it means to you right now?
Well, I guess that's specific to our industry, to construction and architecture. So I think in that realm, it's responsibility, right? So which isn't fun, right?
No,
no, I mean, not that it's not fun, but it's responsibility to inspire. It's responsibility to mentor. It's responsibility to perform. More than anything, right? So we need to be able to. I want to be able to do any of the hard stuff. Right? I don't want to delegate that stuff away. I want people to be confident that I can do it. You know what I mean? Right? So that they're confident that we can do it.
Exactly.
Right? So I think that responsibility is the word that comes to mind in our industry with leadership. So I guess that's how I would define it.
I like that though, because I mean, you have such a responsibility to your clients and to work with integrity and to make sure that, I'm sure high quality is a part of your work process and your, we do. But if you think about how that translates into your approach to leadership, I think that makes sense too. And I actually love that you use that word, because I do feel like a lot of times people get put into leadership roles and they don't recognize the level of responsibility that does come with it. It's just kind of like, this isn't about just getting a higher title and maybe a little bit more in your paycheck. There's actually a certain level of responsibility that comes with this now. You are I think Simon Sinek, he's like one of my favorite leadership gurus, but he said leadership isn't about being in charge. It's about caring for the people in your charge.
Sure.
And I always like that because
great.
it's like parenthood. You are responsible for these little humans that, you have now. And so it's not just about like, oh, great. Like I said, I have a few more bucks in my paycheck now, or I get this title or the corner office or whatever it is. I mean, you are responsible for the success of other people.
That's true. And really in architecture, it's even literal beyond that, in that you're responsible for the life, safety, welfare, the built environment. So we have a level of responsibility for code. I mean, that's why we exist, right? Because to kind of execute the code that insurance people put about years and years ago, and after the great fire and the great whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
But so, there's that level, but you also need to mentor the folks along so that they can be confident in taking on the responsibility, right? Ultimately. So
if I asked your team how they would describe you as a leader, what do you think they would say?
That's a wonderful question. I would love to know that answer. I hopefully they'll say that I lead from kind of beside, or not necessarily in front, and that I help. I'm in the trenches with them, right? I help guide, but I'm also, my hands are dirty, right? So that they're confident in my execution, but they're also comfortable enough to know that I have their back. So, I hope so.
Yeah. I'm curious, this just kind of came to my mind as I was listening to you. Sometimes I think people who have a real passion for a certain type of work, as they rise through different levels of leadership, they actually don't get to do that work anymore as much. And I'm so curious, how much do you still get to do maybe the things that you truly loved about architecture work versus more leading, administrating, things like that?
Well, that's funny. I just had this conversation. We interviewed for a job that was an evening interview. So we drove down the road a couple an hour or so, and we're talking about that, because when things get busy, which you want things to get busy, right? Because we're a family environment. We don't take people on temporarily to finish a project. We want them there long term. So when we get busy, I delegate the fun stuff because I want everyone to be happy. So
I've been that person too. Like, I really like that project, but I'll let you do it because I know you love it too.
Exactly. And it's schematic design, right? It's what stuff looks like for us. That's the fun part. But we'll try to do it collaboratively still, but I don't do it as much as I want. I mean, I'm stuck on cost estimating and writing narratives and doing code research more so. And you have to polish that stuff as well. I mean, you need to sketch, you need to, just like anything, it goes away, right? If you don't sharpen it. But
that makes sense.
But I would say that, that's the stuff that you don't get to schematic design. That's the fun stuff.
But, I think it's cool that you said, but you still have to do that to stay fresh and stay current, because it almost makes it still a priority for you, as opposed to like, well, I just, I either don't have the time, so I'm not going to do it, or I want to keep people on my team happy, so I'm going to give it to them. It almost forces you to stay in it a little bit, even though you probably don't have the time or you have other priorities. It's almost like a good excuse. I know that's not a good term, but like, to continue to have a hand in it.
Yeah, for sure.
Because you want to stay engaged too.
You want to stay engaged. You want it to be the best product it can be, but I want it to come from everyone. I want it to be, but I want everyone to be able to push it to that next level. So we'll do stuff. We try to do it at least monthly. That maybe we'll make up a project, and then everyone can do that part of it.
Sketch battles.
Well, we do what we call charrettes. So which is a fun
way
word.
Better terms than I do.
I like sketch battle. In fact, I think we'll do that.
That's kind of fun to me. I don't know.
It'd be a game
Mine
show.
would be like a triangle on top of a square if I was engaged in your sketch battle. But
that could turn into something. But
exactly.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Charrettes? Is that what you said? That's a cool word.
So we'll order lunch, and we'll either have a project or we'll make a project and say, how do we make this facade change from a church to a school,
That's so cool.
And then we'll all sketch for a while, we'll pin it up, or you can, find inspirational images to do that. But yeah, you got to stay sharp on that stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of, from a leadership side, you need to show the versatility or kind of promote the versatility and help everyone understand that it's not about bathroom details all the time. So let's want to come to work. So let's do the fun stuff as much as we can.
Yeah. Oh yeah. When you were talking about changing the design, you sparked something that I'm going completely off script. So hopefully I'm not going to throw you with this question, but it just made me think about, I don't know if you're aware of this, but there's a lot of organizations right now that are trying to incorporate design thinking into professions that aren't normally trained in design thinking. And I think it's kind of interesting. There's even, there's 2 Stanford professors who are in the School of Design, but actually created a whole book and program called Designing Your Life. And they actually apply design principles to just kind of figuring out what you want to do in your life and your career, which I thought was really cool. So it's this whole notion of applying that thinking process or that thinking style into industries, into corporations where maybe that's not been a part of their training. Like you were talking about your dad being an engineer. My dad's an engineer too. Obviously, engineers are trained to think a certain way. Lawyers are trained to think a certain way. Business people, everyone, is trained to think a certain way. And so if you're not trained in design thinking per se, then, you go into whatever your role is, HR, finance, and you're just doing the things that you were trained to do. And so now there's this whole concept around like, well, let's try to teach people design thinking with, I think, the primary purpose of sparking innovation and trying to get people to think outside the box and think differently about things. So I don't know if you have a perspective on that, because that is more of what your day-to-day thinking and process is all about.
Well, first, I'd love to see, I've not heard of that, so I'd like to see that book.
Yeah. I'll send it to you. It's really cool.
Yeah. But also I know that places like Nike, I know that they were big, they targeted architects. I don't know if they still do, but just because of the process that and it's more theory based for them, and obviously less about life safety.
Yeah, right.
Hopefully.
Right.
But yeah, just because of that, the way that I guess we think.
I know. And it's probably strange because you're just like, I don't know, what's, just, so different or special about it. But I think from what I remember in the book, a lot of it was about, being open to failure and being open to a lot of drafts and versions of it doesn't have to be the first thing that you come up with, and you can test, you can craft something and test it out. They were talking about people who go mid-career and then just completely have a breakdown of I've been a CFO for my whole life and I don't want to be a CFO anymore, but I've always loved to cook and I think I just want to open a restaurant. And they would be like, hold on a second, let's talk about, why that's so appealing to you. And maybe instead of, completely blowing up your life and quitting your job and opening a restaurant, you could talk to someone that runs a restaurant and see what they think about, what that's like. Or you can almost interview people who are in the jobs that you think you want and just hear from them what they like about it, what they don't like about it. And there's a whole bunch of tools and tips and stuff. But I think a lot of it is just more around being open to more than one idea, thinking about, failure differently as well.
Well, you definitely you have to accept criticism for sure. And I think, that's what, and school does beat that into you. So it's a lot about, okay, we'll draw this, sketch it up, and then let's talk about it.
Rip it apart.
Yeah, rip it apart, change it. And it's the same in the real world. There are ideas, but there are clients' ideas that we really need to portray for them. So you have to be able to to have a thick skin, and that's probably part of that as well.
Yeah.
So I think that.
Do you find that ever bleeds over into leadership styles though? If you're kind of trained to be critical, do you feel like sometimes it applies not just to the technical aspects of what people are doing, but also the behavioral side too? Or do you feel like people draw a line between the two?
No, I think it does for sure.
Yeah.
And I think that specifically at Omni, that's where we try to separate ourselves, right?
Yeah.
I think that you have to, it can't be a cookie cutter idea, right? And so it's got to be, so nowadays everything's computer, right? So there's 3D software that models everything in 3D as you go. There's maybe, you click a stair, you say where the top and bottom is, and there's a stair.
Right.
What our goal, what we need to, as leaders, teach is that it doesn't have to be that stair. So let's give it, if it's a school, maybe it can have a railing with plastic with crayons melted into, I don't know. But
so cool.
It doesn't have to be the stair that Revit gives you.
Yeah.
And that, as far as leadership, that's what I think we need to teach, maybe better as things get more AI and more automated. Think about it.
Think for yourself.
Think for yourself. Yes.
Yeah. And what else is possible? Because you're right. It's just going to give you what you speak into it or type into it. And that's not necessarily the best answer or the best option.
Yeah. And I get the pleasure of reviewing projects at Fairmont State sometimes. They'll call me, which it's inspirational. I love it because they're sometimes not buildable, but they make you think and they're fun.
Yeah.
And I've gotten just this last semester, probably my first sampling of, well, this rendering was, I just told AI for an outdoor garden with exterior landscape. I'm like, oh no. this is where we're headed. This is where we're headed. But it's going to be interesting.
Yeah. And again, I feel like maybe if you had writer's block, whatever the design version is of writer's block, but it could be helpful just to kind of get your wheels turning. Like you said, of, okay, put a stair in there, and then maybe seeing a stair visually will get you to start thinking about what else could it be. Mm-hmm. But yeah, to just rely on that alone could be
dangerous.
Yeah, because, and especially when you layer on the safety and the codes and all the things that you still have to follow.
Yeah. I think I'll be long gone by the time it gets to that point. So,
and I'm so curious to know too, again, I know this isn't a leadership question per se, but just because we are in West Virginia, not everyone that listens to our podcast is in West Virginia, so they might not know the landscape here. It's a beautiful state, but I would imagine it can be a challenging topography. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
To design. And I mean, again, you have someone who, like me, doesn't really know much about what you do and says, I want this. And you're like, well, that could work in Charleston, South Carolina, but that is not going to work. And that, top of that, surface mine that you, you want to put your structure on or whatever. I mean, does that, I would imagine that poses challenges at times too.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you're plugged into the industry here, so everybody here has worked with it forever.
Yeah.
It didn't change sometime, but that's the first question is, well, what's the site? It's West Virginia flat. Okay. All right. So that's okay. That's better than it's a cliff.
It's a cliff.
West Virginia flat is still probably a 45-degree slope, but no, I mean, it's something you work with, but it's fun to work with. It's
an additional challenge. And maybe you can even, I would think, find ways to leverage the landscape as opposed to work against it.
Yeah, well, the site is your primary inspiration for your design. So that needs to inform a good design, that needs to inform what it does, how it responds to make a successful project for sure.
Very cool. So interesting. I'm just like fascinated by just the whole work and,
It's fun. It can be fun.
Yeah. What are some of the challenges, would you say, from a leadership perspective that you've encountered along the way, or maybe things that you think differently about now that you may have thought earlier on in your career?
Well, I think when you said challenges, what comes to mind immediately is the kind of generational gap, right? Like everybody's a clicker now. So it's click, click, whoa, stop, whoa. So that's the way my wife shops. But
that is perfect. The clickers,
like slow down.
Yeah.
But that's definitely a challenge. I think that as far as changes, I don't know. Early in my career, I didn't understand. I viewed leadership in our industry as just, okay, the maestro, you do this, you do that.
Yeah.
But I learned quickly that you got to have your hands dirty. You got to be part of the project to truly lead it and in what we do.
Yeah.
Right. So, which is probably different for different industries for sure.
Yeah.
Like it's less about inspiration, maybe. It's more about guidance and mentorship.
Yeah.
But also about getting your hands dirty and finding solutions.
Well, and I think people respect that too. I mean, I think there's times where it makes sense from a leadership perspective that you don't have to be the one that's actually done that work. Sometimes it's the role requires just a really strong leader who can allow people who do have subject matter expertise to just, be the best version of themselves. And I think that, in some cases that totally makes sense. It's great. Sometimes it's even helpful not to know what the people are, the people that you're leading to have that subject matter expertise, only because sometimes it causes people to want to micromanage or be too involved and too in the weeds with people. But on the flip side, I could see how, again, if there's, certain regulations or certain responsibilities that you have, if you're just completely disconnected from that, it's going to impact the work product. And I feel like your team wouldn't probably respect you as much either, that you're not in the trenches with them.
For sure. And also, you need to be not a master, but you need to understand many different trades. So you got to understand a little bit about mechanical, about electrical, about plumbing.
Yeah.
You have to guide the project. So you have to.
Otherwise, you're not going to make a lot of friends in the construction and contracting space, right?
Yeah, right. So you're the leader of your team, but you're also the leader of the project team. So typically the architect brings all those folks together and
so
guides that project. So you have to kind of lead meetings and lead progress.
So I bet you have a lot of experience with a lot of different personalities in a room and trying to get them to all come to maybe a consensus on something.
Yeah, and that can usually those personalities are on the client side, to be honest with you. But and they're my boss ultimately, right? They're my leader. But also sometimes we can sniff that out, and we don't go after a lot of those projects. But you definitely have to learn to. Okay, let me understand what my role needs to be as far as leader of the team, but also as the guy that gets the earful from you as the client.
It sounds like, because I'm in client-based work too, and I feel like the further along I go in the journey, the more time I spend in the beginning trying to understand expectations of, what are you really looking for? What's your assumption about what I'm going to do for you? And I think there's a real benefit in investing a lot of time on that front end of being crystal clear about the expectations, because even when you think you're crystal clear, there's still things that little stealth expectations that pop up along the way. But I'm not sure if that's been your experience too.
Yeah, I think that we don't do a lot of houses, we don't do a lot of residential, but we do it. And I guess what that triggered in my mind is the first meetings, you're always kind of sensing what, where do I need to be? What's my role? Where's the direction going to come from?
Yeah.
So, I think of having a meeting with, the man of the house for a new house.
Right.
You'll get through the meeting and you kind of gently have to ask is, when does your wife get involved here? Because this is, I know where the decisions are going to come from. But,
Pretty sure she's got some opinions too about this.
But you that's the first thing you do is feel it out and see where you need to be.
Yeah.
And then I think it's important to help your team understand that you're feeling that you're falling into that role.
Yeah. Because they're watching and learning as they see you model that too.
Sure. Yeah.
Which is cool. So I know you do a lot in the community, and I know you have a family too. So I feel like that's hard sometimes to balance. You're on boards, you're doing, I wanted to talk about the Augusta Development Corporation too, if we can for a few minutes, but I guess I'm curious, number one, to know why that matters to you to be involved in the community, and what the motivation is, because again, I'm sure that creates a sacrifice somewhere in your life to devote time to that.
Well, I guess my involvement stems from buildings, right? And ultimately, my first job was in Charleston, South Carolina, which, as you mentioned, is just a wealth of historic architecture. And I first grew interested in it in that realm.
Yeah.
But it was unattainable. It was $5 million for the rundown building on Main Street.
Right.
And then when you come back to Fairmont, West Virginia, it's a little bit more attainable for the rundown building on Main Street.
Yeah.
So I think I had a passion for that, and kind of bought a couple of those here and there, and sort of renovated them. And that kind of was almost like an involuntary leadership role there. So, I was brought into some community forums
like
revitalization
type work, and
well, what's your opinion, and how do you do this best? And that was, I just kind of did it, right? And so that was more of an experience.
It was just playing. It was just a hobby.
Exactly. It was more of an experience-based leadership thing that I happened into. But you mentioned family too, right? I have two boys, and they are the best, right? So, but they sort of, when they came along, they helped redefine leadership. Oh yeah. Because now you're a role model, and you have to guide the right way, and show them what it means to grow up someday, hopefully do it right. Yeah. If suddenly you're being watched a little more closely than you realize. Right. So,
great. You heard words get repeated that you're like, I didn't know you were listening to that conversation.
Oh, you can spell now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So letting them, I bring them into those projects as well. Let them run around the old jail cell and let them see it finished and see it from the beginning to the end. And I enjoy that. You mentioned Augusta. That's kind of, I guess, from kind of doing my own stuff, I was asked to be on that board, and that's a nonprofit kind of based from the Housing Authority. And our goal and objective is housing, to fill a void.
Affordable housing.
Right? Yeah. So, we've done some multi-housing projects, but also multi-family housing projects, but also individual housing projects based on some state funding where individuals can then buy those at a reduced rate or with a better financing. Yeah. And that's been fun. I would
feel like that would be a neat challenge to think about. How do we make this affordable, but still like something that a family that would feel like home to a family,
Yeah. That's, the challenge with that is much more on paper, I guess, than the actual design work. I mean, it needs to be, it doesn't look affordable. Right. So, but that's been a fun challenge, and that's been a fun board to sit on, and it's had to grow and change with the pandemic and with the way things have moved. So hopefully there's some new.
Yeah, the affordability component is extra challenging.
Yes, for everything and for everybody. Construction's out of control. So, but I've enjoyed that challenge for sure.
Yeah. I think that's neat. The other thing I thought was really cool is that, so we always ask guests, prior to the podcast, is there anything that you want to talk about? Is there anything that's really important to you? And you said your wife, which I thought was really cool. So tell us about your wife.
Well, I mean, I originally thought that I would have her here because, she's my leader.
Aww. So, well, you're just telling us now, Adam, we could have brought her here.
I know.
Is she in the car?
I know. No, she's around. She's a real estate agent, and so she's been one of the leading agents for years. But she's and I don't want to
Yeah. I know.
She's on a board, Band of Parents, which is a childhood cancer board. So that means a lot to us.
Yes.
And so she's a champion for that and that fundraiser. And that's why I didn't bring her, right? Because I never hold it in if she were here.
Do you think we could get her on?
Oh, absolutely.
We'll bring her on and have her talk. Yeah.
But that hits close to home for us. We have a survivor in our family. So little guy.
Yeah. Simon.
Yeah. Simon. Mm-hmm.
Good.
And so we give back in that, it first started as a dinner that our friends had for us for fundraising.
Yeah.
And we kind of kept that dinner going. And now she's on the board, which is a national board. And so they make some big decisions on who to finance. And,
that's amazing.
So, she's great. We've been watching The Crown. I compare her to Princess Di, but now that I'm watching The Crown, I'm like, well, the good parts. Because I didn't know.
Not the scandalous parts. She's very beautiful. I've seen her picture. So that tracks too.
That tracks too. But yeah, and that overlaps with the community involvement too. I mean, there was a lot of support for us.
Yes.
During his sickness. And so I don't want to say it's a responsibility to give back. We want to.
Well, yeah. I mean, I understand that. I mean, there's such an appreciation there that it's a pay it forward.
Mm-hmm.
You want to help others too. And I appreciate you sharing that because I think there's so much need out there all the time. And I think there are a lot of opportunities for people to step up as leaders within the community. But I think there's just a lot of barriers for people. It's, I have a kid that plays sports and they practice every night and I can't make time for this, or, I've got this or that. I mean, everyone has, I think, very valid reasons why sometimes it's a struggle for them to get involved. But I wanted to shine a light on it to say, listen, there's a lot of opportunities out there and you can do it. I mean, you are an example of someone who has a very busy, successful career, an active family, but you're still obviously making time to support the community too.
Well, and that's why I mentioned her, because it's a we thing. It's not me. But part of that is just do it, right? And that's what I tell a lot of the folks that I work with is your architecture exam, just schedule it and do it. There's never time.
Yes.
There's never going to be time. It's like having a kid, right?
Yes, there's no perfect
when's
time.
The right time?
I know.
Isn't.
There's no perfect time. Just do it.
Yeah. So it's the same with community involvement. If it's something you believe in, just do it. Just show up. Just make the first $5 donation or whatever. But just do it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I love that. I love that you said it because I'm really passionate about goals too. And a lot of goal achievement is just like starting to take action.
Yeah. That's
take a step. It doesn't have to be, I'm going to start a nonprofit. It could be just go help one night a week or something.
And that's the involuntary leadership side of it, right? Because once you just do it, then that's what shows people that it can be done.
Yeah.
And maybe even how to do it, and do it better the next time and keep doing it.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm with you. So I feel like you sit in a really good position of, you've got a few years of experience under your belt. You're not at the end of your career by no means, but I mean, you've gotten a few years in. And so I think it would be helpful just to hear your perspective on maybe what advice you would give. I know you have a lot of interns or people coming out of school, fresh out of school, but what advice would you give to new leaders or people just starting out around how to think about their responsibility as a leader?
I mean, I think first off is accept that role.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to figure out where you want to go and kind of what leadership necessities are involved with that.
Yeah.
So you can't go too far without becoming a better leader.
Yeah.
So you need to understand that.
Mm-hmm.
You need to understand what that, everybody wants to be at the top, but that means that there's people you're responsible for. So, understand that first of all.
Yeah.
And then it's the same advice. Do it.
Yeah.
Just take those first steps. Yeah. Don't be afraid.
Yeah.
Don't be timid. Don't be scared. Everything comes easier with experience for sure.
Yes.
but you don't get the experience until you
do it.
Jeez, I didn't know it was going to be a Nike ad. We started through that.
It's so true, though. It's so true.
Yeah, that's for sure.
I know. I remember one time I was talking to someone who was new on the team, and I said something like, how can I, we're doing a performance evaluation, I think, but I said something like, how can I be a better leader for you? Or how can I help you in your career? And she was like, I just wish that something like, I wish I was comfortable making decisions like you are, or confident. I was like, I'm glad that I appear to be confident. Great. But I was like, listen, but I'm 10, 15 years ahead of you in terms of experience. And so I'm glad that I seem confident. I wouldn't say that I always make the right decisions, but a lot of my decision-making process is based on a lot of wrong decisions that I've made.
Yeah.
You just have to experience it. And the more you have under your belt, and there's really no substitution for that. I mean, I know people are antsy when they're first getting out of school and they want to, be the boss tomorrow and, make the big paychecks. And I totally understand that, but it's like, it takes time and
for sure
battle scars to get there.
And you can't, and another good piece of advice, I think, you can't be afraid to say, I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's a pet peeve of mine is you don't know.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know.
Yeah.
So but you have to be able to find the answer. That's what you want.
Yeah.
That's what you're looking for in a good leader is resourcefulness as well.
Right.
So you're not expected to know every single answer.
Oh, that's huge.
But if you can find a way to get it and be humbled enough to say, I don't know it, but I'll get it for you.
Right.
And I think I know how to go about getting it for you.
Yeah.
I think that's big.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that too, because I do think a lot of times people have an expectation that if you're in a leadership role, and I would say especially in technical fields where you have worked for many years and developed experience, that people maybe assume you are a subject matter expert and you know everything there is to know. And to be able to say, hey, listen, I do have a lot of experience, or I have done something like this before, but that doesn't necessarily mean I just know all the answers automatically. Because again, things continue to change. We all have opportunities to grow and learn different things.
Yeah, for sure. And in our industry in North Central West Virginia, you can't be a fire station expert because you'll do 2 in your career. Right. You can't be a rec center expert because you'll do 1.
Yeah.
So you have to be flexible enough to understand a little bit of all of it, but be humbled enough to get some help.
Yeah.
And maybe bring in a subject matter expert,
right.
like you said, to go after some of these different projects.
Yeah. And that humility, like you said, and the resourcefulness to say, hey, listen, I'm not the guy, but I can get that person for you who does know, or, we'll bring in as part of our project, the best person for this particular area to make sure that we get the best outcome. And it doesn't all have to be me. You don't have to know all the answers.
Right. Yeah. And I think you mentioned humility. I try to hammer that into my boys, between be humble and be respectful, be well-mannered. Yeah. That's gonna kind of thrust you into some leadership positions when people respect you and look up to you as a human.
Yes.
Above,
be a good person.
Before you even, be a good person.
There's a lot of success that can come with just being a good person.
Just say please and thank you. And it'll get you a long way.
It will.
You call people back.
Yeah. Show up.
Show up. Yeah.
Try to work hard. Have a good attitude. I mean, it's really the basics. There's a lot of basics, but really it can take you far.
It's not hard.
It's not.
It isn't.
We all overthink it.
Yeah.
We make it way harder than it needs to be.
Yep. Yes, absolutely.
That's good advice.
Yeah, well, we'll see if they listen.
Yeah, I know. Well, you just keep saying it over and over again. I think some of parenting is almost like brainwashing.
Yeah,
so,
trick them. Yeah.
Exactly.
For sure.
This is awesome. I have so enjoyed this conversation. Anything that we haven't talked about that you were desperate for me to ask you about or talk about?
You snuck in the band of parents and the wife thing, and I didn't cry, so I appreciate that because I'm a bit of a crier.
Hey, I am too. I was like, oh, don't start, because then we're gonna need tissues.
Yeah. So no, that was big. I appreciate that, but I think
And we'll put a link for Band of Parents. We can put a link to the show.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then people can check it out too and get
absolutely.
more details about it. Awesome. Yeah. Okay. How about a lightning round?
Let's do it.
Your game. Lightning round. Okay. I'm going to get my questions out. 60 seconds to answer as many open-ended questions about you as you can.
Okay.
On your mark, get set, go. What season best fits your personality?
Spring.
Okay. Coming up. What's your most used emoji in text?
The heart, the love heart.
Love. Do you have a color that you use or?
No, just the big red one.
Just the big red one.
I love to send it to contractors. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
What book, song, movie, or podcast has had the greatest impact on your life?
Oh, I'm a movie guy. Wow.
I know, it's a stumper.
Searching for Bobby Fischer.
Ooh, okay.
There's some leadership in there. Watch it.
Yeah, that's a good one. What's something about you that surprises people when they first hear it?
That my wife doesn't let me sing at home.
I feel like we need to have a conversation about that. All right, fill in the blank. I spend too much money on
baseball cards.
Also need to have a conversation on that. What celebrity would you want to play you in a movie?
Oh,
that's our timer, but you can
Adrian
answer.
Grenier.
Good choice. Yes.
That's because that's my wife's hall pass actor.
Yeah, but he's got like the curly hair.
A little curly.
Yeah, like I can totally see that. It's a good choice. Okay.
You're
great. I've enjoyed this conversation.
I have enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Well. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And we'll get Misty. That's
yes.
your wife?
Yep.
Yeah. We'll get Misty to come on the show next.
Yeah, she's better than me. So
no, I don't.
For a second.
We'll see. We'll see how many downloads. We could be like a little competition. Who gets more downloads?
She's definitely more social media active, so I stand no chance.
Well, I look forward to that. That's all the time we have for today. Until next time, shine bright, everyone.